Sometimes you feel so alone and overwhelmed you don't know where to turn. These days, it seems like there is no end to our problems. We invite you to connect with Silent Unity, the 24-hour prayer ministry where someone is waiting to pray with you right now. Since 1890, Silent Unity has always been there. No judgment or dogma, just someone affirming the best for you. Call 816-969-2000 today. You can also connect online at unityprayervigil.org.
Exploring our oneness with Spirit and each other. Unity Online Radio.
Thank you for tuning in for this Unity Partner Program. Unity Online Radio partners with spiritual leaders from organizations whose mission and messages complement Unity's. We are pleased to bring you this program on Unity Online Radio, the voice of an awakening world.
Welcome to Living on Purpose with psychology doctoral candidate Jessie Harriet from Atlanta, Georgia. Are you ready to make a switch? A switch from barely living to living on purpose. During the next hour, you will discover principles to help you live a fully functioning, conscious, and purposeful life. The all is mind, and so are you. Let's live on purpose. Now, here's your host, Jessie Harriet.
And thank you so much, folks, for tuning in to another episode of Living on Purpose. I'm your host, Jessie Harriet. We have an exciting hour for you on this week, a very special guest calling in from Ireland. Her name is Aak Paola Ambrosi, and I want to jump right into the conversation. And, folks, if you cannot listen in to the show like how you wish to when you're out fulfilling your purpose and your vocation, definitely go back and download the show for free. You can log on to unity.fm and click on the program archive and the name of the show and download this particular episode. It'll be available as an MP3 or podcast. You can download it for your library. You can look it up via iTunes and just type in unity.fm and scroll down the various podcasts and click on the show Living on Purpose. It'll be available there as well. Download this information because it's very useful and it'll help you with your own growth and, as Carl Jung called it, your own individuation and transformation. But without further ado, just want to tell you a bit about the guest. Her name is Aak, excuse my pronunciation, Paola Ambrosi. Paola is a Mexican-born medicine woman and mystic, and she embodies the native indigenous wisdom of the earth, and she weaves the spiritual and mystical aspects of life together with science and psychology. And she's also a transpersonal psychology scholar, one of those spiritual psychologies that we often talk about. She's the author of Awakening Consciousness, which is a brilliant insight into the human condition and the path to inner freedom. And she's an active advocate of peace and compassion, and she believes that our strength resides within our own heart, and it's a process of awakening to the truth and finding a discipline of prayer that brings realization to the human being and eventually brings harmony to the earth. Welcome to the program, Paola.
Hello, Jessie. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you so much for coming on.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you for the invitation. It's always exciting to work with like-minded people like you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And so you're calling all the way from Ireland. Oh, my gosh.
That's right, in the other side of the planet.
Wow. I know. It's beautiful how technology is. Well, just to let you know, I discovered your work in my own studies of the spiritual psychologies, taught by Carl Jung, and then later on pioneered in our generation by Ken Wilber and Francis Vaughan and Roger Walsh, and also by the transpersonal scholar that you were influenced by that produced the work on holotropic breath work, Stanislav Grof. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah. Tell us a bit about yourself and how all of this weaves together for you, because you have an immense background spanning science and psychology and indigenous wisdom. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I suppose both psychology and indigenous wisdom came hand in hand as I was growing up. I always wanted to study medicine and saw the benefit of studying science and the advances that we were discovering as a human race about the universe and the human body and the human being. And this always attracted me. And at the same time, I was very much involved at the time, because of my religious upbringing, with the people of indigenous communities. So I would have been exposed to their way of life, their wisdom, their own beliefs. And very quickly, I got to realize that the message that I thought I was bringing to them when I was going on retreats and on the missions to their towns was basically irrelevant, because they already had and carried a wisdom of their own. And they were very people that, instead of living in very poor conditions, as we thought, and very ignorant conditions, they actually had an abundant life, full of respect, full of love, full of harmony with the earth. So in one way, I always was fascinated with this, and this resonated in my heart as a truth. And eventually, throughout my journey in medical school, I found the transpersonal work of Stan Grof and Ken Wilber and David Lukoff and, of course, Gustav Jung and all the different names you've mentioned. And I realized that there was, and we were moving towards merging what I have learned from indigenous wisdoms and the knowledge around the true nature and essence of the universe, and merging that wisdom and knowledge with our intellectual journey and with science. And I found that through basically the transpersonal movement. And yeah, one of the characters that influenced my life a lot was Stanislav Grof, and not only holotropic breathwork, but his teachings and the maps of consciousness that he came out with through his own experiential journeys.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful. You said so much, and you covered a lot of the things that I wanted to talk about. To kind of jump in there, what is indigenous wisdom for those that are listening in and that have heard of the topic and aren't quite sure what it is? What is indigenous wisdom?
Okay, well, I refer to maybe what people understand as shamanism. But the word shamanism doesn't really describe what indigenous wisdom is. Indigenous wisdom is the knowledge of the universe. It's the information that is imprinted in the order and the chaos of the universe itself. And our ancestors and people nowadays knew how to access that wisdom in different ways, through meditation, journey work, etc. And they were able to connect and tap into that information and in some way maybe download it and bring it into their everyday lives. So indigenous wisdom is basically the inherent wisdom that's within the earth, the universe, and within ourselves.
So what is shamanism, and what is a shaman in connection to that, because you mentioned shamanism as well?
Well, the word shaman comes from tribes from Siberia, and for the people of Siberia, it means the one who knows. Now, there is also another origin more towards Asia, where there is a very similar Sanskrit word that's called samana, and that word means the act of soothing. So basically, the shaman was the person in the community that knew how to soothe the soul of other human beings. it was the guide, the one who could see beyond the illusions of the material world. And that is, let's say, the meaning of the word. Now, nowadays, I personally believe it probably has been confused with sorcery and witchcraft and maybe one or another forms of healing. And I believe we may use the word very lightly. Now, there are some indigenous communities that do not have shamans, that they call their people medicine people, or they call them priests, or they are they have different names. So it wouldn't be correct to say that every guide or healer of the community is a shaman, because not all the tribes around the world use the word.
Right. So shamans are more than just technicians, because you can find some herbal or just earth-like practitioners that utilize herbal medicine, and even in the medical community you can find just people who know how to perform the practice of what it is they do, but they're actual healers of the soul as well. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, basically they are guides and healers of the soul. They help to bring peace to our hearts, and by bringing peace to our heart and spirit, they can bring peace to our bodies as well.
And in your work as a shamanistic healer and one who studies indigenous wisdom and also transpersonal psychology, how does all of this compare with Western traditions of psychology? Because in my work, I found that a lot of psychology has just been based on pathology. You know, they focused on diagnosing what's wrong and identifying disease and illnesses versus trying to liberate people and lead them to, betterment,
Well, yeah, I actually can give you a very interesting example. There was a client recently that commented in the dialogue that we were having, I thought I was here to tell you all the things that are wrong with me. And I thought I was here to talk about all the things that bring me suffering. I never thought I was here to talk about the good things about my life. And I really loved the comment, because I do believe that in the Western approach, in psychology and also in medicine, just as you say, we focus on what is wrong. And therapy nowadays, and some kinds of therapy, are focused almost in storing the pot of the pain body, of the hurt and the traumas. But they are just, I think Ram Dass is the one that says this, that therapy or psychoanalysis, sometimes it's like shifting the furniture inside of a prison cell, but it doesn't really get you out of the prison cell. So in my perspective, and my life experience, I do feel that is the main difference. It's in the West, we tend to approach things as problems that need to be fixed or caught or repaired. And from an indigenous wisdom perspective, there are no problems. There are just simply challenges or moments in our life where the body, the mind, and the spirit speak to us in their own language, and therefore we have an opportunity to evolve thanks to whatever challenge has been presented. So the person is always encouraged to find the causes of the symptoms they are experiencing so they can resolve the core issue behind the symptoms, as opposed to only staying with what's in the surface.
Wow, and that's amazing, because that kind of led me to my next question. I was going to ask you, what is a shamanistic view of the world and our experience of reality? And you kind of summed it up there, but could you go into it a little further? How does yourself as a shaman view reality and our experiences of the world and pain and suffering and lack and limitation?
Well, I see planet Earth and this place that we're experiencing at the moment as a bardo, or a state of consciousness where there is suffering. And I believe that when we forget that, we're trying to make this place into something that it is not. So the experience in this specific dimension has a particular characteristic that is ignorance. And with ignorance, I mean blindness. When we incarnate, we forget. It's like we become blind to the true nature of reality. And when we live in that ignorance is when we suffer, because we attach to the pain, we attach to the emotional distress, we attach to the material things, and we forget that everything is impermanent. Everything is in constant movement. Everything is in a constant process of life and death. So from my perspective, this place where we have come is a place to awaken. It's a place where we have the tools and the capacity to free ourselves from the struggle and from the suffering by awakening to the true nature of reality.
That's beautiful. How do we separate our attachment to this pain and suffering that you mentioned and heal it instead of just moving it around, moving the furniture around a prison cell, as you say? Because when you look at therapy, and you mentioned it earlier, in some of our own spiritual work and affirmation treatment, how do we move past of simply denying what's there, or even just recognizing what's there, but then not bringing that totality of healing there? You know, how do we bring healing to these various areas that we're talking about here from your perspective?
I wish there was an easy answer to that. And if anybody knows, I would love to hear it. I suppose first I would have to explain that I believe that once we incarnate into a human body, there is a specific information that comes in our DNA, in our spirit. And that information recreates itself over and over in our lives. So our conception, in a way, imprints the information into the physical body, into the DNA and the biology of this new self that's going to emerge. The pregnancy and the birth process reassure it and reaffirm it in all the different bodies, in the intellectual body, in the emotional body. So by the time we are born, we already have all the programs that are going to play themselves out throughout our lives. So from that moment onward, there is simply a constant repetition of the same information in different circumstances. So sometimes we feel that in order to heal our pain, we need to find its root. And when we do therapy or healing work, we're able to trace it all the way back to our childhood. And then nowadays we go beyond that into our birth or our conception, or some people like to go to past lives. And then after doing that, we have the feeling, or maybe the wishful thinking, that it's going to be over and done. And a month later, the same issue recurs and reappears in our life again.
That's true.
Now, I believe that it's because the information that is within us, it's just simply doing what it's meant to do. It's communicating to us. So when the issues recur or reappear, it doesn't necessarily mean that we've done something wrong, that therapy didn't work, that the healing session didn't work, but it means here is another opportunity to be able to find a different way to deal with the same issue or with the same emotional charge. So I believe it is possible to release most of the gross emotional charge of the different experiences. But ultimately, as far as we're inhabiting this physical body will still speak to me through the same information that it received since it was conceived. So there are certain issues that until the day I die, I will keep meeting in life. Where the hip home and where I have 100% of freedom or choice is in how do I face, react or not react to the things that life brings up. So it's I think I expanded on this, but I believe this is very important because there is sometimes in the West we tend to think that there is an end to the therapy or an end to the healing. And from my perspective, what I'm trying to say is once we are alive, we are in a spiral of evolution that is infinite. So as we go upwards in that spiral, we will keep meeting the same points, north, south, east, and west in the spiral. And in those points, the same issue will emerge. But every time we're meeting it at a completely different level.
Oh, man, that's beautiful. Folks, you're listening to Aak Paola Ambrosi. We have to take a quick commercial break. We'll have more of the conversation when we return right here at Unity Online Radio. Stay tuned.
Unity Online Radio is bringing the message of unity to tens of thousands of spiritual seekers around the world. If you have been served by this programming, we invite you to support it by visiting www.unity.fm and clicking on Donate Now. Thank you for your support.
Hello, listeners. Did you know we've gone mobile? That's right. Your favorite Unity online radio programs are available on your mobile device. Now you can take us with you wherever you go. Using apps from Live 365 or Stitcher, you can listen to Unity Online Radio live or on demand. To learn more, visit www.unity.fm and click on Mobile Listening.
From on the air to on the sea, pack your bags and come with me. Hey, hey, what you waiting for? An early winter rendezvous with all the things you love to do. Hey, hey, treat yourself to more. A little more summer, a little more sun, a little less work and a lot more fun. A little more beach, a little more sand, a little less stress and a lot more tan.
Join your favorite Unity Online Radio hosts for Cruise in the Caribbean, November 10th to 17th, 2012. On this fun-filled Caribbean adventure, enjoy sunshine, exceptional dining, and island excursions. Feed your spirit with music, message, and meditation, plus one-on-one time with some of your favorite hosts. That's Cruise in the Caribbean, November 10th to 17th, 2012. To learn more, go to unity.fm/cruise.
A little more sunset, a little more sea, a little less do, and a lot more be. Hey, hey. Hey, hey.
You've been listening to Living on Purpose with Jesse Harriet. If you have a question or comment about today's broadcast, or if you'd like to join in the discussion, friend us on Facebook at Jesse Harriet or email us at livingonpurpose@unity.fm. Now, more Living on Purpose.
And we're back talking today. We're having a very interesting and powerful conversation with Aak Paola Ambrosi. She is a shamanistic healer, mystic, Mexican-born medicine woman, and she is a transpersonal scholar. We're having a very powerful discussion, and if you missed the first half, go back and download the show. Just log on at the end of the program to unity.fm and click on Program Archives and download the show for your library. Now, Paola, I want to jump back into our discussion where we left off at. You mentioned several powerful things, but you also mentioned something about the various bodies that we have. You know, you mentioned the pain body and the emotional body. How do we pay attention to the signals that are and the signs that are coming from the various bodies that we have? Because, as you mentioned, just because we receive themes and signals from these various bodies, it doesn't necessarily mean that therapy didn't work or that we did something wrong.
Yes, that is very important, and it's a very important point, I suppose, for both sides, for all of those who practice any form of therapy and healing, and for all of us who are clients as well of those therapies. I personally believe that there are three main bodies, which is the emotional, the intellectual body, and the physical body. And these three different skins that the body has, they perceive in different ways. So the physical body can feel sensations and pain. The intellectual body carries all what is our thought patterns and analytical, rational patterns. And then our emotional body gives us the capacity to feel emotion. Now, I believe that these three bodies, or skins of the human being, as I prefer to call them, we have three of them that are more like the gross part of the body that come to the outside, and then we have three of them move towards the inside of our being and are the subtle parts of our being. And inside and internally, giving life to everything there is, our true nature, our pure being essence. It's the part that people call spirit, or the God or divine essence. So these bodies are designed to feed us back information of whatever it is that we're experiencing. So a positive outcome in therapy is not necessarily to stop feeling depression or to stop having the experience of depression, but it's maybe how to learn to be friends with the experience, let's say, of where that depression is taking us, and realize that that's only one type of experience and that we can choose to move to different types of experiences. Now, for example, somebody who has been doing healing work for a while, let's just stay with that example, for depression, they might feel that, well, everything was very successful, the depression lifted, they might even have the gift of being off any medication, and then something happens in their lives, and 10 years after, they have a recurrence, and they feel, oh, well, the doctors were right. I was sick. I have a chronic illness, and I am depressed. What I would say is, all that is happening is that the bodies of that person are just letting them know that they are experiencing symptoms like depression. It doesn't mean the person is ill. The bodies are simply communicating and saying, we're struggling here. There's something going on that we need to talk about, that we need to move through our system.
And that is so true. Even in my own journey and in my own work, I've seen a similar thing. And what I found is that, you know, people don't really want to have that conversation. It requires you to tell the truth. And you may have to face some things that you know, just in your normal awakening hour may not want to deal with, you know?
Yes,
because the average person just wants it to go away.
they just want to numb the symptoms. So Stan Grof always uses the example of the car. He says, well, if you're driving a car and the red bulb for the oil comes up, the Western approach, what it does is that it goes to the electric panel, takes out the fuse that lit up that bulb, and keeps driving the car. And then after 10 years, the car breaks down. So if we look at it from a holistic perspective, then what we would do is to actually figure out what's wrong with the car and maybe put some oil so the light can go off naturally and the car can keep driving for longer.
Right. And let's talk about your work with Stanislav Grof. How did you encounter his work, and how did you get started into the spiritual psychology, this aspect of psychology, the transpersonal work?
Well, I encountered Stan's work first in medical school because I wanted to focus on psychiatry, so his name first came up there. Of course, not with very good reviews according to the people who were teaching me at the time, but I thought that, well, his work was probably something out of this planet. And
controversial,
and then, yeah, very controversial. And then when I was studying Tibetan Buddhism, well, again, his work came up really strongly, and I decided then to get involved with holotropic breathwork and with the training programs that they had and all of that. And what was fascinating for me was that, well, behind the work, and I want to say it's not only the holotropic breathwork, but behind Stan's discoveries and maps of consciousness, what I was able to read was that the human being needs spaces to, how can I put this, to be okay with madness. It's almost like we need to allow chaos in our mind to happen from time to time so we don't explode. And
I totally get that.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah, well, that's eventually if we bottle up things, and in our Western way of living, everything is so tidy and perfect. And to be normal, you can't laugh too loud, you can't cry too much. There's all these restrictions to the psyche and are making the people explode into what we call mental illness.
That is true. There's scientific and psychological work that talks about peak experiences and just being happy all the time. The positive psychology movement is very beautiful, but in some aspects, sometimes it doesn't make room for some of the other emotions that are on the spectrum, like a thermostat. We have to be able to balance the pendulum of life as it swings back and forth. And it's okay if it does, because it's going to swing back the other way.
Certainly, I agree. I think life, there's a duality in life. And if we allow ourselves to discover anger, then it's when we can discover how to love.
Right. And what I found in my own work is that it's funny that you said love, because love as a very powerful impulse, one of the eros and, the driving impulse of creation, can also be very, very destructive. It can be very destructive. If you take a look at some of the work by Robert Johnson and all of these other youngins who talk about love, they talk about some of the other emotions connected to the spectrum and some of the other archetypes, like, for instance, in Greek mythology, you have Hera, the goddess who's married to Zeus, who's very much a type point of love, but at the same time, Hera can be prone to jealousy. So these spectrums, this spectrum is huge, and the pendulum does swing both ways.
Yes, certainly. And there's another point that you're touching in there, Jesse, is that our misunderstanding of love with attachment, as opposed to letting things be. that unconditional love has no conditions. And once we put conditions to it, well, then, as you say, then all the other emotions like desire or jealousy come in, and the outcome is not necessarily a very positive one.
That's very true. So in your work, because I want to shift the conversation, I noticed that you do a lot of advocacy work, too. I've seen you do, through research and just online, you do a lot of peace walks and things like that. How has love and your work just expanded to embrace a more social, social activism aspect of your ministry? You understand what I'm trying to ask?
I think I do. Well, I believe that in the times of evolution that we're living, I found that I couldn't sit still. That we needed to take the work to another level, and that level was into action. So rather than talking and reading books and gathering information, to learn how to live it, learn how to become it. And that's what impulsed me to start all the pilgrimages for peace and the meditations for peace. And I can tell you an interesting story, that the very first pilgrimage for peace that I started, and I did, very enthusiastic, and I was delighted, that I was going to walk for peace for all this time. And I realized as the day was going by, this was when I was doing the Camino de Santiago in France. And as the day was going by, I couldn't be moving further away from peace within myself. And all I was experiencing internally was anger and confusion and rage and tiredness. And I was really puzzled by the experience. I had the strong intention of walking for peace, but the experience was completely opposite. And by the time that they finished, well, I was in a total state of confusion. And then as time went by and I sat and meditated with it, I realized what I had done within myself. That it was that in the moment that I chose to take the intention of peace and act upon it and become a living, breathing expression of peace with every step I took, it was as if I submerged myself in a big ocean of peace, and anything that was peace start floating like oil to the surface. So what I could experience in my conscious mind was everything within me that was not at peace. And it was a beautiful healing experience. And now, these days, people who do the walks, they often report very similar experiences where just simply by walking, breathing, and acting the peace we want in the world, but becoming that yourself, you help your body to cleanse and to clean whatever is not at peace.
Right, and it helps us to engage the world differently. Was there a catalyst for you that allowed you to take all of this wonderful conversation that we're having and all of the beautiful conversations that's going on all over the planet? Was there a catalyst for you that enabled you to take the information from just, cognitive understanding with your head to fully embodying it and living it out?
Well, I think it was more out of an internal experience from my heart. I felt it was a calling. It was something that I just simply had to do. It was a very strong calling from my own spirit as of part of what I was meant to do. So I always felt that it was a strong heartbeat internally inside of me. And actually, intellectually, it didn't make much sense. And even to my husband, it didn't make much sense when I said, well, I'm going to start to walk for peace, and I'm going off for a month to do a pilgrimage. There was a question mark, more than a question mark in his face. So I know, and he knows now, why did it all that started. So I believe sometimes we receive or we have this craving or this need to do something, and I am a big fan of following the call of your heart and spirit before then rationalizing it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow, that's beautiful, folks. You are listening to Aak Paola Ambrosi. We're having a powerful conversation, and if you missed the first two halves of the show, go back and download it. You can log on to iTunes and look up the show, unity.fm, and scroll through the podcast and click on Living on Purpose that way, or you can just go directly to the site at unity.fm and click on Program Archives and download this wonderful conversation and all the other archives from this season for your library. We only have 2 minutes left in the half, and so I'll save this question for later on because I want to get into the calling that you talked about, this internal heartbeat, and your opinion on how we can respond to our own individual callings. But for those that are listening, hang on. When we come back from the break, we'll talk about that. But real quickly, we only have 2 minutes left. Your spiritual name, Aak, tell us about that, and how did you receive that? Did you receive that later on in life or towards the beginning of your life, or where did that come in at?
Well, the spiritual name means Mother Turtle, and I received that name around 7 years ago in a ceremony I did with a healer in Mexico. And what was surprising was that for many years the turtle had been a very powerful symbol and archetype as an animal for me and in my work, and it kept coming up a lot. And even the healing that was moving through me, the symbol or the archetype of the turtle was very present. So when the name came out in the ceremony and this healer offered it to me and gave me the meaning, I was basically blown away, because it was another moment of a reassurance from a spirit that, you know, the universe is listening. So, it's a Mayan name, and normally the symbol of the turtle is a symbol of wisdom. It's an animal over which the different worlds are formed. So in the Mayan cosmology, the worlds lie on top of a turtle. And there's many other connections in between it and the constellation of Orion and the cosmologies of the Mayan. But I definitely find that, well, the different animals, I think they're beautiful archetypes to work with, and I'm sure you're familiar with all of them. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they are. And on that note, we have to take a quick commercial break, folks. Stay tuned. We'll get more into information about your calling and about Mayan cosmology and all of this great stuff. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Do you ask with childlike wonder, what is the nature of God? Who is Jesus? What is the Christ? How do we know what we know? When you ask these or other heart-centered questions about the non-physical, intangible aspects of life, you are, on some level, a student of metaphysics. New from Unity House and nearly 5 years in the making, Heart-Centered Metaphysics, a deeper look at Unity teachings, is now available. This is Paul Hasselbeck, author of this quintessential study guide. Enjoy a deeper exploration of universal spiritual principles and truths, whether you're just starting or have been seeking for years. Each thought-provoking chapter of Heart-Centered Metaphysics speaks to truth seekers like you, providing essential tools to help elevate your consciousness and create spiritual transformations in your outer life and circumstances. Order your copy today from the Unity online store at www.unity.org. Then click on Shop.
Do you think you know all you want to know about the characters in the Bible? Do you know who could be called the king who loved too much? Or what it means to be a Jezebel? Or that the best love story in the Bible begins with the declared commitment of two women? The Bible's symbolic meaning can help you transform your life and discover the presence and power of God within you. Find out what these characters can teach you about your own life today by tuning into Biblical Power for Your Life. Each week, co-hosts Reverends Karen Tudor and E.J. Niles present a Bible character from a historical, cultural, psychological, and symbolic perspective. Your comments and questions are part of this lively discussion. Tune in every Thursday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and power up your life only at Unity Online Radio, the voice of an awakening world.
You've been listening to Living on Purpose, where psychology meets spirituality. Now, here is your host, Jesse Harriet.
And we're back, folks, talking today with Aak Paola Ambrosi, a shamanic healer, mystic, and medicine woman. I want to get in this wonderful information, folks, that we were discussing over the break. Aak, I'm just going to jump right into it. We were talking about Mayan cosmology, and I also want to ask you a question about our calling and that inner heartbeat you mentioned. But to jump into Mayan cosmology, what is because there's a lot of obsession with Mayans and indigenous religion now because of the 2012 and things like that. Could you tell us a bit, give us an overview of Mayan cosmology and the way they view the world and the end times?
Well, I suppose the most important aspect to understand from Mayan cosmology is that they don't see time as linear. Now, most of the indigenous wisdom have this. For them, time is a spiral. So they know that cycles complete. And at the time those cycles complete, different things happen. So based on observation, they were able to know what was going to happen when certain cycles would complete. So there are many, many different Mayan calendars. There is not only one. They had solar calendar, a lunar calendar, a long count, a short count. There are many, many of them. And what is happening now is simply that according to their different calendars and counts, they know that a lot of them are going to come to zero again. So it's not that the calendar finishes. It's just simply that a round of the calendar is completing. And what they've observed and what they knew was that at this time, when all these different counts would come to this point that we're actually living already, there was going to be a big leap in evolution. So if we want to use psychology to understand that, all the Mayans were talking about was that we're going to have a birth. The contractions have started, waters have broken, and the baby is going to be born. And at the moment, I think as a humanity, and the Mayans speak about this in their own words, but as a human race, we have the opportunity either to make this birth difficult. We have the chance to kill the baby if we don't help it. We can do a cesarean. We can put anesthesia into it so we don't feel anything, or we can embrace it joyfully, knowing what it is, and breathe together with it, and see that we give birth to the new heart of the human race as we pass through this point in evolution.
Oh, wow. And so with all of that said, how do we respond to that calling that you mentioned earlier, that inner heartbeat, so that we can contribute to this, towards that evolutionary impulse you're talking about of this birthing process? Because I believe by all of us, becoming aware of our own inner calling and then approaching life from that vantage point, then we won't abort, this baby that you're talking about figuratively.
Well, I believe the easiest way will be if we can park our rational minds. If we can stop thinking about it and simply experience it and let life do what it knows what to do. I believe that we humans have become extremely arrogant in regards to thinking that we know everything about everything. And the universe has been here way before we were here. And the universe knows what it is doing. The earth knows what it is doing. We are just simply participants of that play. And the more we can just simply let be as opposed to do, I believe the more we're going to facilitate the birth. And the more we're also going to respond to our inner calling, because what normally stops us from responding to our hearts is our rational mind and our ego mind that comes in bringing fears, doubts, guilt, shame. And once we welcome into the house of our being guilt and shame and fear, we stop living. It is just as the same as to suffocate the baby of our heart. So in order to let our heart shine and to respond to the destiny that each one of us has in this evolution, which I have no doubt that each one of us has a huge destiny to play in here, we just need to let it be, let it flow, and stop thinking about it.
Oh, man. And this is very powerful. Folks, if you've missed the show, definitely go back and download the show for your archives. I'm definitely going to download it for mine. We have about a couple minutes left in the show to kind of wrap things up. What's going on in your life, Nog, and where's your work taking you? Because I think during the show, during the break, you mentioned that you're getting ready to make a move from Ireland and you're getting ready to go and actually do some work with the Mayan elders.
Well, yes, it has been a recent change. So my husband and I will be going to the Mayan elders. We're going to be working with them, and there has been talk with the Mayan elders that it is very important for them to pass on their wisdom and their traditions to the new generations. And the elders know that the Western world is not interested in listening to indigenous people, and they know, according to their own manuscripts and the rest, that it is now their duty to pass it on to the new generations. So we're going to go down there where a very generous heart has donated 200 acres of jungle that we're going to use to keep them and preserve them and build up a sanctuary and create an ashram or a school for Mayan wisdom to preserve the wisdom from the elders of that specific part of the planet. So, from October on, if anybody's interested in helping in the project or participating, we'll be back there in the state of Quintana Roo in Mexico, working in preserving the Mayan tradition.
And how can we get a hold of your work? Because you have a book that you published as well. How can we get a hold of your book and also, your DVDs and CDs if you have any of those products out?
Well, the best way would be to go directly to the website, which is www.paolaambrosi.com. Mm-hmm. And in there you have access to the book. There are going to be some CDs that are going to be up in the website as well. And in there through the email, it'll be the best way to stay in touch for those ones who want to connect with the project down in Mexico. And the email is info@paolaambrosi.com.
Oh, man, we have about a minute left and a half. Folks, you've been listening to a wonderful and dynamic conversation between myself and Aak Paola Ambrosi. She is a mystic and shamanic healer and medicine woman and transpersonal scholar. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for joining me on the program now.
No, thank you very much, Jesse, and keep on the good work you're doing.
Thank you so much. Folks, that's been our show this week. It's been a delightful and amazing conversation. We hope you'll log on to the website and download the show for your archives. This week, take this information. It's very transformative and apply it to your life. Laugh a lot, love someone, and remember to live on purpose. I'm Jesse Harriet. Have a good week, guys.
Thank you for tuning in to Living on Purpose, where psychology meets spirituality with Jesse Harriet. Listen in live every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Central Time for more insights into psychology, ancient wisdom, and how it connects to your life today. Living on Purpose, only on Unity Online Radio, the voice of an awakening world. This program is brought to you in part by www.jesseharriet.com, where psychology meets spirituality. Connect with us on Facebook and YouTube. Keyword search Jesse Harriet.
How's life working for you? Would it be okay with you if it got easier, simpler, yet more meaningful, more vibrant? Join Reverend Carla McClellan Tuesday afternoons for spiritual coaching, creating a vibrant life. Each week, Carla visits with leading-edge coaches as they explore the sacred purpose and stunning results of this exciting and emerging coaching model. Together, they reveal the secrets and successes of this transformational process. Call in and join the discussion as Carla creates a safe and sacred space to dialogue about real life and real-world transformations. That's spiritual coaching, living a vibrant life with Reverend Carla McClellan. Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on Unity FM, the voice of an awakening world.
In quiet moments of prayer, let go of any concern. Anchor your trust deep in the realization that with God all things are possible. Never doubt it for a single moment.
This meditative moment is brought to you by Unity.
Oprah Winfrey says that Eric Butterworth's book, Discover the Power Within You, changed her perspective on life and religion. Maya Angelou quotes Emily Cady's Lessons in Truth as she recalls her own spiritual awakening. What do these books have in common? They are Unity classics. Join Reverend Laura Beth Gilbreth, Minister of Unity Transformation, Thursdays at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, for Hooked on Classics, exploring Unity's classic books. Each month, you'll be able to follow along and contribute your thoughts, questions, and ideas as we examine a different classic Unity book. From Charles and Myrtle Fillmore to Eric Butterworth, Emily Cady, and beyond, experience the foundational teachings of Unity. Hooked on Classics, exploring Unity's classic books. Thursdays on Unity FM, the voice of an awakening world.
Sometimes you feel so alone and overwhelmed you don't know where to turn. These days, it seems like there is no end to our problems. We invite you to connect with Silent Unity, the 24-hour prayer ministry where someone is waiting to pray with you right now. Since 1890, Silent Unity has always been there. No judgment or dogma, just someone affirming the best for you. Call 816-969-2000 today. You can also connect online at unityprayervigil.org.